Hey guys, today I'm going to be painting the Ghoul from Fallout the board game. This is just showing that I did prime him in gray. I'm going to start with some dark flesh, and I'm going to paint his whole suit, so kind of his vest and his slacks in this color. Thought I'd make him a little fancy, and it's actually based off of one of the characters in Fallout 4. Kind of a salesman that ends up becoming a ghoul, and I really like his suit, and this guy can remind me of that, and I'm trying to incorporate some of maybe the lore characters from Fallout, the video games, into this board game. Now, as for the Ghoul himself, in game, he's kind of an interesting character. So he gets healed if he takes any radiation. So if he steps in a radiation pool, he actually heals by 1. But his max health is only 12, which also means that monsters are typically going to go towards you versus, other players on the board. He's very scenario dependent, and so, in some scenarios, he's really overpowered. Far Harbor is one of them, and in some he's actually quite weak. White, this is going to be kind of the base coat for his kind of undershirt here that's kind of showing up through there. Again, just trying to make him, really kind of slick and classy looking. I actually like that he's like the most well-dressed for a ghoul. I could see him being in like a casino in New Vegas or, or something like that. He's pretty neat. Well, except for the fact that he's a ghoul, so I don't know how well he'd be appreciated there, but I'm also going to do his little buttons. I'm just going to blob them on there. I'm going to touch it all up later and get really careful with it. So for now, I'm just trying to get kind of the color scheme down here. And I'm just kind of using my character brush. It's nothing too bad, and just kind of getting it, kind of everywhere. But I'm not loading my brush up either because this is, still fairly thin coats. In fact, this white I needed to go over a second time as well. And some violet red. This is for his tie. I flip-flopped on the tie. At first I was going to do a red tie, more like the character I'm basing him on, but I decided to do something a little different. Steel Legion Drab for his shoes. I didn't know really what to paint them, and there's not, there's not a lot of detail on the boots themselves, so I'm going to have to kind of highlight it to make it, but there's not a whole lot. Some basic skin tone for his skin. Now, this is not going to stay this color at all. I'm going to really make him nasty. Sorry, I do have a little bit of a cold, so I apologize for this voiceover here. Anyway, the ghouls in Fallout, depending on the game you play, they kind of change. So sometimes they're a little greenish, and sometimes they're a little reddish. I'm going to do a bit of both, and I think it kind of captures the essence of both without being as extreme as either. So he's not going to be super red, but he's not going to be super green either. He's just kind of a nasty looking dude. Additionally, he has a lot of texture except for around his mouth. His mouth has texture, but he's supposed to have like these, and you can tell these kind of little textures around his where his jaw would be, and there's just not a lot there on this miniature, which is kind of unfortunate. But anyway, that's going to bring up a lot of those. So here's some burnt red, very much watered down, as you can see, and I'm just kind of, I'm literally even dabbing away with my finger. I want just a tiny bit in kind of these recesses to make it look a little bit nastier. This is not really supposed to be blood, per se. It's just more like where the skin isn't, if that makes sense. And again, it'll kind of help make him a little bit more orangey. I don't know if that's a term, but that's how I'm going to use it. So on his arms, on his hands, and then on his head. So now, as you can see, I'm putting Athonian Camo Shade on, and this is that green shade, and it's just going to make it, a slight green hint. If you wanted this more green, you'd almost have to put it on twice, or better yet, get some green in your paint, and just mix a little bit of green in every color you've done so far, so maybe the burnt red. So your basic skin tone would have a slight green hint to it, and that would kind of give that kind of greenish hue a lot more than the shade will over these two colors. Then I'm going to put some Seraphim Sepia on the shirt. I decided to go with this because it is very much a kind of very light brown, almost an orangey tannish kind of color. And I thought it would look really good on the white to, A, dirty it up, and B, kind of tie it in with the vest as well. Kind of like the lighting's just kind of giving that off just slightly. I'm going to play around with that, the crevice in there because I don't want it to pool under his collar. Some Gehenna's Gold. This is for his kind of pocket watch chain that's going into a pocket here. I didn't know what this was for the longest time. I actually looked up a lot of images and pictures to try and figure it out. But, and now we're on to highlighting. So, as you can see, I'm just adding white to these colors. And so I started with that violet red, and I'm now on that Steel Legion Drab here. And as you can see on those boots, there's not a lot there. So I'm trying to, just make it not look so flat with this highlight. And I'm going to add another layer of highlight that's even more drastic after this, just to try and get it a little bit of texture, especially from the table distance, right? So right here, I think you can tell pretty okay. But the table distance, it just looks like a blob of brown, which is kind of unfortunate. I get that they're, kind of nice, maybe dress shoes or something like that, though I did paint them brown. But, there's just not a lot there to really drag. So as you can see, a third highlight now. I'm just really trying to pop that shape out, especially the part near his pant leg, where there is a lot of texture difference compared to the rest of the shoe, and then a little bit in the back. And now we're on to brass. I'm just putting a little bit of brass. It's a little bit brighter, just a tiny bit right there on the pocket chain. I don't know how much it adds. You could probably skip it, but just trying to highlight that up and make it a little more gleamy. I want that to be the shiniest. Now, as you can see, I got my blade out. If you notice, I did not trim this model at first. I did notice a little bit once I got to this point on his gun that I wanted gone, but that's it. The rest of him is not trimmed at all. And as you can see, he looks perfectly fine. I was very impressed with that. So here's some watered down basic skin tone. This arm is a little not watered down enough. So I fix that later on. But for now, that one's a bit heavy, and I'm going to have to just play around with it after the fact. Much easier than, I think, trying to go back somehow. And so now I'm putting it back onto his head. Now, when I said you can add some green, I did end up adding some of the shade in there. So as you can tell, it's not quite the basic skin color. It is a little green, and that's just to add a little bit more green in there. Try and making it, a little bit the same color-wise. And then especially around kind of his face. Just trying to get that green hue and then basic skin tone there. And then kind of on his head there as well. And then his other arm. So this is the kind of the second coat for it. And so I think that's pretty good. I want to say it is. So here is some Seraphim Sepia, watered down. This is to just kind of hopefully bring it all together. And again, kind of add that kind of orangey hue to it. Baneblade Brown for his 2 or 3 hair strands. I actually wish he kind of had a bit more hair. I like my ghouls actually still with a little bit of hair, but he's got a comb over. And here's that white. I'm just going to bring up those highlights just on the very edges. Really just trying to get rid of the wash as opposed to, a highlight, so that on the highest points, it is actually white. And then it still gets, like you see with the other arm, especially with that pooled color, it just really, changes the color of it a lot. And I want that, but not completely. So just kind of brushing on that white where I think it should be, just kind of more or less haphazardly. And you don't have to be too careful about it. You just really you don't want a pure white, because that doesn't make much sense, right? I mean, it really wouldn't. And so here I'm starting with the highlight on the dark flesh. And so I have a little bit of white mixed in here as well, and have it really watered down to pretty much a milk consistency. And I'm just going along the kind of the edges and the kind of like the trim where his shoulders go up, because it should be brighter there. And just kind of around the edges too. You can kind of remember back when he maybe used to color and used to darken the edges of everything to make a pop. This is kind of the opposite of that, right? So you're just trying to get to the very ends, and then any, difference in height, and just trying to kind of put a little bit there. And now this is a little bit of your heavier highlight. I'm just adding a tiny bit there. I wanted it pretty drastic, not because I wanted it cartoony, but I wanted it really noticeable from the tabletop. And I thought with how clean his suit actually is, that it should have a little bit more sheen to it. Not the Charlie kind, but just a little bit fancier looking, perhaps, and perhaps a different material than cotton, obviously, right? So now I'm onto the pants here, and as you can see, the clothes are really they're yelling to be highlighted, right? I mean, this is what makes highlighting easy. I don't really have to invent any lines here. I don't have to pretend there's anything. Sometimes when you paint like somebody's chest, a lot of times there isn't a collarbone, and so you have to like fake it out with a highlight where it's flat to make it look like there's a collarbone when there's not. This is not the case with his clothes. They are very well designed and really they look like cloth, and that's really awesome. Make sure to get some on his knee that's kind of bent out there for sure. He definitely needs a little bit there and kind of wrapped around. But notice on the top leg, it's actually fairly straight there, which is kind of nice. Bringing on that brass to up here, it's just kind of a more yellowy gold. And then moving on to the Averland Sunset, this is for the kind of yellow part of the gun. So as you can see in the concept art, this is pretty much the gun I was going for here. Okay, and Leadbelcher for all of the metal parts of the gun, which there's not actually a lot of. But, you know, just trying to kind of base it off of this concept art here. You know, there isn't a whole lot of concept art in the game for the characters, so just trying to look around and see what's what and where I should paint everything, especially on the gun, because there's a lot of little fiddly bits here. You may notice I'm on my smaller brush, and I'm just trying to really wrap everything, you know, so it makes sense, right? So, like, what's metal versus that yellow? You can't, you know, the concept art shows me, but on the mini, there's not a real big difference there. I would have painted everything metal, not knowing that in game, this particular gun is that way. Some Squig Orange. This is just kind of for the wires here. Again, it's an excuse to add another color, and it's pretty close to the concept art, which are kind of this reddish orange. And I don't know. I thought they looked really cool. I really like his gun just because of how colorful it is. Moot Green. I do not get to use this enough. This is for like those little vials or whatever. I don't know if they're like an ammo or a power type or what. And then the very tips. Now, in the concept art, the tips are green. In the model, it's not really much of anything. So I kind of have to invent it there. Stormhouse Silver for that little buckle on the back, the little cinch. And then I'm also going to kind of highlight this, but just a little bit, not a huge amount. I'm not going to add a wash or anything like that because I'm also not going to gloss coat it. So it's going to be kind of muted. So I'm going to try and keep it as shiny as possible. A little bit of a highlight on that Averland Sunset, not a whole bunch, just a line. And now we're back onto the Baneblade Brown for the basing. This is just to color the base so that when I do put grass on it, it's not just kind of gray underneath. There's a Moot Green trim. I'm putting all of my Fallout miniatures with this trim because I think it matches kind of the Fallout green fairly well. And just kind of pops them out of the board a little bit so you can actually tell where your people are because these are game pieces. Okay, this is to show you I have two. So I have Castellan Green. I want to try and put a little bit of a kind of a radiation swamp on him just because I feel that fit well. And some Death Guard Green. I'm just kind of globbing them together and swooshing it around, trying to create a little bit of ripples. I wish I had gone back one more time with the Castellan Green and added some dark swirls, but it's not a big deal. I'm adding some glue kind of around the end because I'm going to add these kind of big, I don't know, I feel they're more swampy. This is like weed coarse turf from Scenic something or other. I can't even think of the company right now. But this is just to kind of make it to where it's not so obvious when it stops. So this is kind of growth is around there. And I think that's pretty fitting anyway. And I kind of futz around with it a bit, probably a bit too much. I should have just left it and let it harden. I keep trying to smash it down, but I also don't want it really poofy, and this tends to poof up, so I'm trying to press it down anyway. Here is the astrogranite debris. This is for kind of the rough terrain on the map, so it kind of fits in there. So I'm kind of putting it kind of right here on the end. I don't know how I feel about it being right next to the swamp, but I figure, you know, it looks okay afterwards. And then we have the Administratum Gray dry brushing just to really pop up that turf. That is after it was dry, which is kind of helpful. Okay, so here I'm going to put some kind of tall grass tufts, and it is far too much. Don't ever put this much there. It looks terrible. I end up pulling it out with some tweezers and some brute force and re-gluing on a smaller tuft. That's what you'll see at the very end of the video. It's not this. There's just far too many there. So it can't really spread out the way that I want. Here's some Citadel Purity Seal. This is just a matte varnish to show that I am protecting the mini. And I put, several layers of that all around him. I do not gloss coat the weapon, just like I didn't for the Brotherhood Outcast. I don't want it too shiny, I guess. And now for the grass. So this is earth and burnt grass, fine turf. And I'm just going to kind of pour that all over and then shake it off, trim off the edge. And there it is. There is the finished miniature. Guys, let me know what you think. I really enjoyed painting him. I think he looks great. I love how kind of snazzy he is with his gold chain and his tie and everything, but he's still a ghoul. And a little bit on his knee where it's broken is really nice. Anyway, I really enjoyed painting him. I hope you enjoyed watching it. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Give it a thumbs up if you did like it. I always appreciate that. It really helps the channel, and so I appreciate it as well. Subscribe if you want to see more like this. I will be painting the rest of Fallout. Additionally, I'm still painting Massive Darkness, so you'll see those as well, along with board game reviews and kind of news stories I want to start making here soon as well. So thank you so much for watching. I always appreciate it, and I'll talk to you again next time.